October 27th, 2023. The air hung thick and damp over the dense expanse of the Schwarzwald, a mist-shrouded ancient woodland in southwestern Germany. Dr. Aris Thorne, a leading Roman historian and archaeologist from the University of Bristol, wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, though the temperature was rapidly dropping, bringing with it an unseasonal chill. For weeks his team had been meticulously surveying an uncharted sector, guided by obscure 19th-century cartographic anomalies and tantalizing, unverified local folklore. Their aim? To debunk, or impossibly, confirm the whispers of a Roman presence deep within these primeval woods, miles beyond any established limes fortifications. That afternoon, their ground-penetrating radar, which had previously yielded only geological noise, abruptly screamed to life, painting a distinct, unmistakable grid pattern beneath the soil. It was the undeniable layout of a Roman marching camp. Not a temporary bivouac, but a semi-permanent fortification, complete with a principia, barrack blocks, and a valium. The size, the precision, it was astonishing. As the team began to manually clear the topsoil, revealing remnants of squared timbers and fragments of Roman pottery, a faint, almost imperceptible hum began to permeate the air. It wasn't electrical, it seemed to resonate from the very earth. Then a sudden, sharp crack, like a rifle shot, split the silence. Dr. Thorne spun around. Lena Petrova, the team's field historian, stood frozen, her hands clamped over her ears. Her antique but meticulously maintained field compass, a gift from her grandfather, lay shattered at her feet, its needles spinning wildly, no longer pointing north, but oscillating violently towards the deepest, darkest heart of the forest. From the tree line a sound emerged, distant yet unnervingly clear, a faint, despairing moan, followed by what sounded uncannily like Latin, spoken in a desperate, ragged whisper. Thorne felt a prickle of ice down his spine. This was impossible. The enigma of Rome's Legio Nona Hispana, the 9th Spanish Legion, is one of the most enduring and unsettling mysteries of classical antiquity. First raised by Pompey the Great and later becoming one of Julius Caesar's most trusted legions, it earned a formidable reputation during the Gallic Wars and the subsequent Roman civil wars. Its eagle standard, a symbol of Rome's might and unwavering resolve, had flown across vast swathes of conquered territory, from Hispania to Britannia. Yet by the middle of the 2nd century AD, the 9th Legion vanishes from all official Roman records. Historical accounts provide no definitive explanation for its disappearance. Was it annihilated in battle in northern Britain, perhaps overwhelmed by a Pictish uprising, as some theories suggest? Did it suffer a catastrophic defeat in the Germanic wilderness, a repeat of the infamous Teutoburg forest disaster of 9 AD, where 3 legions under Publius Quinctilius Varus were utterly destroyed by Germanic tribes led by Arminius? Or was it simply disbanded, its veterans reassigned, its name struck from the rolls for some forgotten disgrace? For centuries, historians have debated these possibilities, but concrete archaeological evidence has remained elusive, leaving a gaping void in Roman military history. The last certain mention of the 9th Legion places it in York, Britannia, in 108 AD. By 160 AD, it is conspicuously absent from legionary lists, as documented by sources like Cassius Dio. Our story begins with the chilling premise that the 9th Legion did not simply disband or fall in a conventional battle. It disappeared into something far older, something that predates Roman might and human understanding. The ancient forests of Germania, particularly the vast dark expanses like the Schwarzwald, Black Forest, were considered by the Romans to be places of primordial chaos and barbarian savagery, a stark contrast to their ordered world of roads and cities. These forests were not merely collections of trees, they were living entities imbued with ancient spirits, as fierce and untamed as the Germanic tribes who called them home. Roman chroniclers like Tacitus in his Germania often described the Germans as being deeply connected to their sacred groves, where they worshipped deities unseen by Roman eyes, performing rituals not in grand temples, but beneath the hallowed canopy of ancient trees. This deep reverence for nature formed the foundation of Germanic paganism, distinct from the more anthropocentric Roman pantheon. Among these beliefs were notions of Waldgeister, or forest spirits, entities that guarded the woods. These were not benevolent fey folk. They were often seen as capricious, powerful, and fiercely protective of their domain. They could be tricksters, leading travelers astray with shifting paths and disorienting sounds. They could be malevolent, inflicting madness or despair upon those who desecrated their sacred trees or hunted their animals without reverence. Some legends spoke of spirits that could mimic human voices, lure victims deeper into the woods, or even influence the very weather, conjuring impenetrable fogs and unnatural cold. They were believed to be shapeshifters, sometimes appearing as twisted ancient trees or as shadows that mimicked human form, their eyes glowing faintly in the gloom, akin to the Irrlichter or will-o'-the-wisps of later folklore. They embodied the wildness, the untamed, and the utterly alien nature of the primal forest, a realm beyond Roman order and comprehension. Their power lay not in direct physical combat, but in their ability to manipulate the environment, perception, and ultimately the sanity of intruders. Such entities, it was believed, could bind souls to the forest, forcing them to become part of its eternal, watchful silence. For Roman legionaries accustomed to open-field warfare, the precise movements of the contubernium and clear lines of command, facing an enemy that existed beyond the physical, an enemy that could turn their own minds against them, would have been an unimaginable horror, a psychological war far more devastating than any barbarian charge. Their rigid discipline and engineering prowess, which had conquered half the known world, would be utterly useless against a foe that could not be seen, fought, or understood. Dr. Aris Thorne's expedition team consisted of 4 core members. Dr. Thorne himself, a meticulous, somewhat rigid leader, his skepticism a shield against the unknown. Lena Petrova, the field historian and linguist, whose academic interests bordered on the esoteric, making her more open to alternative interpretations. Ben Carter, the expedition's brilliant but cynical tech specialist, whose faith lay solely in empirical data and the flawless operation of his sophisticated equipment. And Carl Schmidt, their local German guide, a man of few words and deep-set eyes, whose knowledge of the forest was encyclopedic, tempered by a quiet, almost superstitious respect for its secrets. After the initial GPR anomaly and Lena's compass shattering, the atmosphere in camp shifted. Initial excitement gave way to a subtle unease. The hum, first barely perceptible, persisted, a low thrumming that seemed to vibrate in the teeth, making conversation difficult. Ben Carter, usually absorbed in his electronics, complained of constant static on his comms. "It's the mineral content of the soil, probably," he grumbled on October 29th, fiddling with a handheld radio. Or old wartime interference. German lines were probably all over this area. Yet when he tried to launch his drone for aerial mapping, Its GPS went haywire, sending it careening into the canopy before crashing. Twice. "Never had this before," he muttered, examining the mangled rotor blades. GPS is locked, but the drone thinks it's in bloody Greenland. As they began their excavation, strange phenomena escalated. On November 1st, Aris Thorne, while carefully brushing away soil from a section of what appeared to be a barracks wall, experienced a sudden, dramatic drop in temperature. It was as if a patch of Arctic air had materialized around him. He shivered violently, his breath misting, even as the surrounding air remained relatively mild. "Anyone else feel that?" he called out. Lena and Ben, working nearby, shook their heads. "Just you, Professor," Ben said with a grin, though Aris noticed a faint tremor in Ben's hand. That night, sleep became difficult. Aris and Lena both reported vivid, unsettling dreams of being hopelessly lost in an endless forest, pursued by unseen shapes that whispered in a language they couldn't understand, yet which filled them with an overwhelming sense of dread. Carl Schmidt, who always chose to sleep in a small, ancient cabin a short distance from the main camp, simply offered, "The forest dreams sometimes." The archaeological finds were increasingly baffling. By November 5th, they had uncovered remarkably preserved sections of a legionary barracks, identifiable by the distinctive design of the contubernia, 8-man living quarters. They found standard-issue Roman tools, bronze and iron fittings, remnants of leather caligae, military boots, and even a few well-preserved pilum, javelin, heads. But intermingled with these were items suggesting profound disarray. A legionary's gladius, short sword, buried hilt deep in the earth as if dropped in haste. A galea helmet, smashed not by a barbarian axe, but crumpled inwards as if by immense, unseen pressure. And perhaps most disturbingly, a medical instrumentum kit, its contents scattered. Next to what appeared to be a self-inflicted wound on a human humerus bone. "This isn't a battle site," Lena observed, her voice hushed, examining the bone fragments. "No signs of organized combat, no large-scale defensive wounds. It's more like panic, chaos, or something else." The sensory anomalies intensified. The low hum became a constant pressure behind the eyes, a dull ache that aspirin couldn't touch. Ben Carter's electronic equipment, usually robust, began to fail systematically. His geophones, designed to detect subtle ground vibrations, picked up faint, rhythmic thumping sounds from beneath the camp, too deep and too steady to be anything natural. "It's like a heartbeat," he told Aris, his voice strained, eyes wide with a dawning fear that transcended his usual cynicism. A monstrous, slow heartbeat coming from the earth itself. Lena, using a high-fidelity digital audio recorder, captured fleeting whispers, barely audible above the rustle of fallen leaves. When played back and amplified, the whispers resolved into fragments of Latin, distorted and chilling. "We are lost. The trees watch. Sylvae vorat. The woods devour," a phrase Lena recognized from ancient Roman poetic laments about dangerous wildernesses. Carl Schmidt, their stoic guide, began to exhibit more overt signs of unease. He started carrying a small, gnarled piece of wood wrapped in rough cloth, pressing it to his chest at night, murmuring in low German. On November 8th, he found Lena examining a newly unearthed Roman falera, a decorative disc from a soldier's harness, oddly cold to the touch. "You should not touch such things, Fräulein," he said, his voice unusually sharp, almost admonishing. "The forest guards its own." These men, they angered it. They tried to tame it. He then told a fragmented story, passed down through generations of local families of Holzgeister, tree spirits that grew from ancient, forgotten trees, capable of twisting the minds of those who invaded their sacred places. He spoke of the forest shifting, of paths that vanished, of voices that lured men to their doom. Aris dismissed it as local superstition, a product of isolated rural communities, but a seed of doubt had been planted. He could no longer ignore the sheer coincidence of the phenomena. The first major incident occurred on November 10th. Ben Carter, frustrated by continuous equipment failures, decided to spend the night working on a recalcitrant satellite dish outside his tent, hoping to achieve a clear signal for a status report to base camp. Around 0300 hours, Lena was woken by a faint, high-pitched keening sound, a sound of profound despair that seemed to echo directly inside her skull. She rushed out to find Ben, not at the satellite dish, but some 50 meters away, standing perfectly still facing a cluster of ancient oak trees. His head was tilted, as if listening intently to something she couldn't hear. His face was devoid of expression, his eyes wide and unfocused, reflecting the faint moonlight like obsidian. When Lena called his name, he didn't respond. As she approached, a sickly sweet scent, reminiscent of decaying leaves and something metallic, enveloped her, growing stronger as she neared Ben. She saw something glint in the weak moonlight, a faint, phosphorescent glow among the trees, shifting like a will-o'-the-wisp. As Lena grabbed Ben's arm, he flinched violently, his eyes suddenly focusing on her with an uncharacteristic flash of pure terror. "They're here," he whispered, his voice raspy, barely audible. "They're all here, and they want us to join them." Ben collapsed, suffering from extreme hypothermia despite the relatively mild night air. He recovered physically, but his mind was clouded. He spoke constantly of the whispering trees and the pull of the green. The archaeological discoveries began to mirror their own encroaching madness. On November 12th, while excavating a small, collapsed commander's tent, Praetorium, Lena uncovered a sealed lead scroll case. Inside, remarkably preserved, was a vellum scroll, a personal diary penned in Latin by a centurio named Marcus Vipsanius. His entries described not battles, but a slow, psychological torment. The early entries spoke of strange fogs, compasses failing, and the sudden, inexplicable chill. November 14th, 150 AD. The air grows cold. The men shiver not from the winter, but from something else. The forests presses in, our scouts return, confused, claiming paths have shifted. Later entries detailed the legionaries' descent into paranoia. November 20th, Optio Tiberius swears he heard his deceased mother calling him from the trees. He ran into the mist, and we have not seen him since. Others claim to see fleeting figures, shadows that merge with the trunks. The centurion described how the legionaries, despite their discipline, began to turn on each other, driven by a creeping madness rather than any external threat. December 1st. Our rations dwindle, but it is not hunger that breaks us. It is the insidious whispering. It promises warmth, rest, an end to suffering. Some men have begun to mutilate themselves, to tear at their own flesh, as if trying to appease an unseen master. Their eyes, they glow with a strange, unholy light. They crave the quiet of the forest, the eternal embrace of the trees. The final entries were a desperate scrawl: Silve vocant, non barbari, non morimur, transformamus, iam pars arborum sumus. The woods call, not barbarians. We do not die, we transform. Now We are part of the trees." The discovery of the diary sent a fresh wave of terror through the team. Aris, though still clinging to scientific method, couldn't deny the chilling resonance with their own experiences. The hum now felt constant, a pressure building behind his eyes. Communications with their distant base camp became impossible. The main satellite phone and backup radios were completely dead, their batteries inexplicably drained. They were completely isolated. "It's like something is actively jamming us," Ben muttered, tracing lines in the mud. "Or absorbing the energy." The voices from the woods became clearer, more distinct, specifically targeting individuals. Lena heard faint, melodious Latin, the voices of Roman women calling out the names of the missing legionaries, then her own. Aris heard the stern, commanding tones of a Roman legate, barking orders, then chillingly, his own name, spoken with an ancient, resonant authority. The scent of decaying leaves and that sickly, sweet, metallic tang intensified, clinging to their clothes and hair. Carl Schmidt, visibly distressed, tried to explain. "The Holzgeister, they feed on the mind, they twist the spirit, they want to hold what they claim. These Romans, they became part of the forest, their souls trapped. And they want company. They want you to join them." He warned them that the forest itself was a living entity, a vast, ancient consciousness that resented intrusion, especially the Roman attempt to impose their structured, ordered world upon its wild, primeval chaos. They knew they had to leave. On November 15th, they packed their essential gear, leaving most of the unearthed artifacts behind. Carl led the way, relying solely on his innate knowledge of the forest, ignoring the useless compasses. But the forest proved to be a labyrinth. Paths they had followed days before were gone, replaced by impenetrable thickets. Familiar landmarks disappeared. They walked for hours, their sense of direction utterly lost, only to find themselves circling back to the Roman camp. The air grew unnaturally cold again, their breath misting. Shapes flickered at the periphery of their vision, tall, slender forms that seemed to be both tree and humanoid, their glowing eyes watching from the deep shadows between the trunks. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of ancient Latin, German, and sounds that were pure primal forest. The culmination came that afternoon. As they once again found themselves back within the crude perimeter of the Roman camp, a blinding, green-tinged fog rolled in. The hum became a deafening roar, vibrating through their bones. Through the swirling mist, Aris saw them, fleeting apparitions of Roman legionaries, their faces contorted in silent screams, their bodies unnaturally gaunt, their limbs elongated and skeletal, their forms shimmering as if dissolving. They seemed to emerge from the very trees, their arms outstretched, beckoning. He heard the despairing Latin whispers from Centurio Vipsanius's diary, "Iam pars arborum sumus." Then, the most terrifying sight. One of the research assistants, a young German student named Lucas, who had joined them days ago, suddenly stumbled forward, his eyes wide and vacant. He began to walk towards the shimmering figures, his lips parting in a beatific smile, as if answering a call. "I hear them," he whispered, his voice oddly serene. "They are calling me home." Lena screamed, pulling him back, but his resistance was feeble. Lucas kept mumbling. The leaves, so soft, so green. They were forced to physically restrain him, his body unnaturally cold and rigid. Aris, who had prided himself on his rationality, felt his carefully constructed world shatter. He saw the gleam in the apparition's eyes, the raw, ancient hunger. This was no mass hallucination. This was an active, malevolent force, still at work after nearly 2 millennia. The true nature of the events in the Schwarzwald became clearer only after the team's harrowing escape, guided by a frantic Carl Schmidt, who, at some point, simply abandoned the roads and plunged into the deepest parts of the forest, leading them out through instinct alone. Months later, Dr. Anja Weber, a reclusive German folklorist and ethnobotanist whose name Aris had only dimly recognized from old, obscure academic journals, contacted him. She had been living in self-imposed academic exile, meticulously documenting the spiritual beliefs and ancient forest lore of the region, and had explicitly warned the local archaeological society against any deep excavations in that particular section of the Schwarzwald, warnings which Aris, in his initial scientific zeal, had dismissed as quaint superstition. In a series of hushed, late-night video calls and encrypted emails, Dr. Weber offered a chilling analysis that resonated deeply with Aris's and Lena's now traumatized experiences. "You encountered the Altwaldgeister," she explained, her voice grave. "The ancient forest spirits, not mere nature spirits, but primeval entities. They are the consciousness of the forest itself, guardians of its untouched purity. For centuries, they existed in harmony with the local Germanic tribes, who understood their power and respected their boundaries. But then came Rome." Dr. Weber outlined the profound cultural clash. The Romans, with their rigid order, their straight roads, their military discipline, their insistence on taming nature, were anathema to the Altwaldgeister. The 9th Legion, venturing so far into the wild heart of Germania, sought to impose their will, to build their structured camp, to fell ancient trees. This was not merely an invasion of territory, but a desecration of a sacred, living entity. She explained that the spirits did not engage in conventional warfare. They did not fight with spears or arrows. They fought with the forest itself. The hum you experienced, that is the forest's pulse, its ancient song when it is disturbed. The sudden drops in temperature are manifestations of their presence, their breath, and the electronic interference, Mr. Carter's shattered compass. These are the effects of a primal magic, a disruption of modern human order by an older, more fundamental one. Dr. Weber emphasized the psychological nature of the threat. The Altwaldgeister do not kill the body directly, they devour the mind. They lure with whispers, with visions of loved ones, with promises of peace or power. They exploit the deepest fears and desires, driving men to madness, to self-destruction, to willingly shed their humanity and join the forest. This, she asserted, explained the Centurio Vipsanius's diary entries, the disorientation, the paranoia, the self-inflicted wounds on the unearthed bone, the ultimate surrender to the forest, the transformation into something akin to the whispering trees themselves. The Roman attempts at order were irrelevant. Their discipline crumbled against an enemy that existed within their own minds. They did not die in battle, they were absorbed. Their souls, their very essence, became part of the Altwaldgeister, forever bound to that place, forever crying out for company. Carl Schmidt's gnarled wood, Dr. Weber confirmed, was an ancient apotropaic charm, a small piece of the forest imbued with a protective spirit to ward off the more malevolent forces. It had saved them from Lucas's ultimate fate, but only just. She concluded, her voice low. "The forest is still active. It is still guarding its secrets. You were merely lucky to escape. And now, by disturbing it, you have drawn its attention again." The events in the Schwarzwald had a profound and lasting impact on the surviving members of Dr. Thorne's expedition. Dr. Aris Thorne himself, once a bastion of scientific rationalism, was irrevocably changed. He abandoned his purely historical archaeological pursuits, his mind now open to the interdisciplinary study of folklore, ancient religions, and the fringes of paranormal phenomena. He became a quiet advocate for a more respectful, almost reverent approach to archaeological sites plagued by recurring nightmares of endless forests and the persistent phantom hum behind his eyes. He reported an almost constant, faint smell of damp earth and decaying leaves, even when nowhere near a forest. Lena Petrova, haunted by the Latin whispers, became consumed by the mystery. She dedicated her life to translating obscure ancient texts, searching for any mention of similar phenomena, her academic rigor now tinged with a desperate, almost obsessive curiosity. Her own mental state, though not as damaged as others, often hovered at the edge of the abyss. She would sometimes lapse into periods of intense introspection, staring blankly at walls, muttering fragments of ancient Latin. Ben Carter, the tech specialist, was permanently affected. His once sharp mind, so reliant on logic and data, was shattered. He could no longer work with electronics, claiming they screamed at him with the voices of the forest. He suffered from profound paranoia, hearing constant static and whispers, eventually being institutionalized, a hollow shell of his former cynical self. Carl Schmitt returned to his quiet life, his ancestral fears grimly confirmed. He became a more prominent, if reclusive, figure in local folklore, his warnings about the Whispering Woods now taken with an undeniable gravity by the villagers. Officially, Dr. Thorne's expedition was concluded due to unforeseen geological instability and severe psychological stress on the team. All reports were immediately classified by the German authorities, perhaps under pressure from intelligence agencies or military branches who, while officially dismissive, recognized the unsettling nature of the incidents. The site itself was swiftly and covertly sealed off, an unmarked, restricted zone established around it, guarded by anonymous forestry officials with unusual clearances. To this day, the area is locally known as Legion's Grave, or Whispering Woods, with strict, unspoken warnings against entry. The disappearance of the 9th Legion remains officially unsolved in mainstream academia, a tantalizing historical blank spot. However, the true story, woven from the chilling accounts of the survivors and confirmed by the ancient local folklore, has become a dark legend, growing more unsettling with each telling, a testament to the primal, untamed forces that lie beneath the veneer of human civilization. The whispers continue, carried on the wind through the ancient trees, a testament to souls absorbed, still crying out for new companionship. Thank you for joining Dr. A whisper of war for this exploration of how the relentless ambition of Roman order may have collided with something far older, far more powerful, leading to the chilling fate of the 9th Legion. This story serves as a profound reminder of the arrogance of human conquest when faced with the ancient living spirit of nature. It forces us to confront the terrifying fragility of the human mind when exposed to horrors that transcend our understanding, blurring the lines between history and myth, between sanity and madness. The Black Forest, a place of profound beauty and ancient mystery, holds its secrets fiercely, and perhaps the restless souls of a forgotten legion, forever bound to the trees they once sought to conquer. Some places are not meant to be tamed. Some mysteries are best left buried, for disturbing them might awaken forces that history has long forgotten, but which never truly sleep. If you found this exploration into the shadows of history compelling, please consider liking this video, sharing it with those who appreciate the darker corners of our past, and subscribing for more journeys into the unexplained and the unsettling. Your comments and theories are always welcome below. Until next time, remember that even the mightiest empires can fall to an enemy that cannot be defeated by steel and strategy.